Good morning to all of you. In the last class, uh, we have completed the study on the muscular system, and today we will be moving on to the next topic, which is a very interesting and at the same time, in the present scenario, that appears to be uh, more relevant. That is the immunology. Probably all of you may be knowing or maybe wondering, why do we get diseases? It's a very important and most pertinent question one should ask. Not only why we get the diseases, why only some of us get the diseases, whereas the others are not, though they are in direct contact with the people, those who are having the diseases. So, this is a very interesting topic to discuss. Many times, you also know that you take a lot of vaccinations also. And in order to protect yourself from the diseases, you take vaccination. Then you may wonder how this vaccination helps us in protecting ourselves from the forthcoming diseases. This is one way. And another interesting thing is there are certain diseases, once you catch, you are assured the immunity throughout. That means, suppose once you get a particular disease, you don't get it through uh, in your entire uh, life. Why is so? So there may be, why is so? For example, you might have heard your parent, at least your parents saying that if you get the chicken pox, it is assured that throughout your life you don't get again the chicken pox. Why is so? But whereas there are diseases, there is no guarantee. Even last month you might have got it, and this month also there is a likelihood of catching that. For example, the cold or fever. Why is so? These are some of the very interesting questions which everyone wants to find answer, irrespective of whether it is a student of science or biology or a layman. So here in this topic, immunology, we will try to find out the answer or to know why it's so. What is the immune system? How it's going to help us? Because many times we know that if somebody catches the diseases very often, we say that he or she is having a very weak immune system. At the same time, if a person is not getting any disease, we say that he has a very strong immune system. What do you mean by this strong and weak immune system? Why this study of this immune system and immunology becomes more pertinent in the present scenario is because of the COVID uh, 19 infection that all of us are worried about, because even in this so-called corona, we know that for some it becomes highly dangerous and it may be fatal, but whereas some maximum of the people who are infected, even they do not show the symptoms also, and a very few of them show the symptoms, and it can be it, uh, heals on its own. But whereas some to 1 to 2% they end up ultimately in the hospital, and there is no guarantee that they will not come back. They will come back. So these are the condition. Because of that only we are having these online classes. Otherwise, all of us would have sit in the classroom and discussed in detail face to face. But here, because of that problem, we are even undertaking this. What's happening? This uh, e-learning is also because of this. So that's why I have told you, within this given scenario, very important and more pertinent topic. Now let's try to understand what is immunology, immune system, what are the different uh, parameters that are associated with our immune system and immunology in general. So, in the very beginning, let's try to understand, instead of defining that, the importance of our immune system. Once we understand the importance of immune system, probably giving a definition for our immunology or immune system will be more easy, and of course you are in a better position to understand and appreciate the definition. So what is the role of our immune system? The immune system is nothing but the body defense mechanism. It is nothing but the body defense mechanism where our body is protected by having its own defense system against the pathogens, or mainly, okay, we can call it as pathogens. Pathogens can be virus, protozoa, bacteria, or anything. So it's a body defense system. So this all of us know that uh, as this is the body defense system, what happens if our defense system becomes weak? If the defense system of our body becomes weak, we becomes more susceptible to infections. For example, the AIDS. It's a disease which is the there's two way. One is because of the weak immune system, the AIDS virus can enter our body, and once it enters our body, it further weakens our immune system. Then this is the first thing that we should know, that is the body defense mechanism. Uh, Second important thing is not only body against the pathogens or infections, even it defends against the tumors, even the so-called cancer, what we call the cancer usually results in the tumors, and our immune system fight against this um, tumor. So that's why nowadays in cancer, the most promising uh, way of treatment or therapy is immunotherapy. Then not only that, our immune system is responsible for clearing the dead cells, and whatever the tissue damage that happens, it is to be repaired, and this immune system is undoubtedly in having the role of clearing the dead cells and undertaking the tissue repair. Otherwise, what happens that suppose if the dead cells are more, or if the tissues are not repaired, naturally uh, the infection may lead to secondary infections. Secondary infections, or then what happens if it is not healed properly, tissue repair is not done properly, there will be an excessive response uh, to the pathogens as a result, or to the injured cells, that may lead to fibrosis or organ dysfunctioning may happen. But fortunately, in most of the cases, it has been tackled effectively by our immune system. Even sometimes, our immune system can injure the cells and even cause the pathogenic inflammation. That is what is called as autoimmunity. Immune autoimmune disorders. Our immune system, instead of fighting against the pathogens, will start fighting against our own cells. That is what you call the uh, autoimmune responses. So this can cause the even injure the cells and inflammation. For example, a particular disease you might be knowing, that's a psoriasis. Psoriasis is a disease especially seen on the skin, where there will be always skin problem, red patches and itching and all those things will be there. And even you cannot treating is very difficult, because it is because of the hyperactive immune system, where in order to control that you have to uh, weaken your immune system. Even the allergies, sometimes allergies, you may be allergic to certain something, understanding this immune system or immune responses, let's try to understand some of the definitions which are uh, generally involved in the immunology. First is the immunity. What is immunity? Immunity is the process by which the protection against the infections are conferred. So protection against the infections, we call it as immunity. If we have a better protection against the infection, we say that a person is having a good immunity, a strong immunity, or protection against the infection is less, then we say that a person is having weak immunity. Then sensitivity. Sensitivity uh, is the one detectable reaction to exposure to previously encountered substances. Suppose if the same virus or a bacteria or the same strain of virus or bacteria think that it has infected a person something 5 years back, 10 years back, or few months back. If the same strain or species infects him once again, it is detected immediately. A detectable reaction will be there in our body towards the previously encountered substances, that is known as sensitivity. I am talking this definition of sensitivity with respect to the immunology only. Sensitivity may be something else in your daily life. But here in immunology, the sensitivity refers to if we are able to, if our body is able to recognize or detect, is able to recognize or detect the previously infected parasite or pathogen, that is known as sensitivity. So, but one thing I have told you immunity and sensitivity, but in practice, it is not possible to measure the protective immunity because you cannot say that you cannot measure the level of our immunity and say that you are um, I mean, having a very good immunity, you are having a weak immunity or strong immunity. It is only uh, in general practice, but in clinical practice, you cannot measure the level of protective immunity against the infection. A person may be having strong immunity against a particular virus. At the same time, he may be weak for some other bacteria. So that's why uh, uh, it is not possible also. So in immunity, basically there are two types. One is innate and another one is adaptive immunity. So what is innate? Literary meaning of innate is by birth. But here it's not so. It's the immunity ready to it is just like our border security forces, which are always ready to attack. Many pathogenic microbes have evolved to resist innate immunity. Always present, it is always there. So once the microbes enter the your epithelial cells, immediately they are targeted. They are recognized by the phagocytes, dendritic cells, or natural killer cells, and they are totally uh, brought under control within uh, 12 hours almost. So that is what you call innate immunity, where our immune system is always present and ready to attack. But the second one is called as adaptive immunity. Adaptive immunity takes time. It may take 1 day, 3 days, 5 days, sometime may not also. So here what happens is once the our immune system is stimulated by the microbes, then it will undertake a lot of immune responses. By that, it produces antibodies, lymphocytes, and all those things, and thereby it will develop the immunity. It will take long time. But whereas innate immunity is of very short duration, it can show the effect, and uh, it is always ready. combat the entering pathogens. But it is not so in case of the adaptive immunity. So here, uh, adaptive immunity is more important for us. Innate immunity is also equally important. I am not saying that it is not important, but it is very fast and always inactive. Uh, the most of the problems what we encounter is with the adaptive immune responses, adaptive immunity, because adaptive immunity has certain um, parameters which look for and then work against the pathogens. One is the specificity. All our adaptive immune responses are highly specific to the pathogens that they enter. Um, First, they have to distinctly identify that what is the type of the pathogen which has entered, whether it has already whether we have a history of the same pathogen in our body, or if not, what are to be done. All those things are to be done. For that, they are highly specific. Second thing is diversity. Uh, Once it recognizes the pathogen, then our immune system respond to large variety of antigens. Antigens are pathogens. Antigens are pathogens, and uh, it can function against host of antigens. That's the specialty. And another very interesting thing is our adaptive immune system keeps a memory. As I have told you, if at all a particular infection, say chickenpox, if we are encountered or infected by chickenpox once, we don't get it once again. It's because our adaptive immunity uh, keeps a history of the infections, and in their memory it keeps that, and within no time it function against that. So that's why repeated exposure to the same antigen, the responses will be very fast and uh, accurate. Then clonal expansion. So once this antigen enters the body, then our adaptive immune system produces what you call antibodies. I will come to that later. What is antibody and what's the function and character. But now, one thing that produces antigen specific lymphocytes, and it keeps the pace with the microbes. As the microbes multiply, our antibodies also multiply. Then our adaptive immune system is specialized also. It has the specialization. That means it generates responses that are optimal for diseases against different types of microbes. So it knows how many antibodies are to be produced, what is the optimum level of defense that is required, optimal level, uh, not less, not more. That's the special one. Then contraction and homeostasis. Um, Here, that means it allows the immune system to respond totally new encountered antigens. Not only the one which has entered in the past, but even if a fresh pathogen for the first time, if it enters, then also that our adaptive immune system can function against that. And non-reactivity to self. Uh, at the same time, this is more important. Generally speaking, our adaptive immune system does not fight against the same the cells of the same person or the cells of the uh, individual. So it recognizes that, and it will prevent injury to the host during the responses, because it has to fight only against the foreign antigen, but it will not function against the host himself or herself. So our immune, again I will introduce a few more terminologies. What is immunology now? So the immunology, study of components and functions of the immune system. Immunology refers to the components as well as the functions of the immune system, that is known as immunology, which is a larger title, I should say. Then next one is what is then immune system? It's a system. Remember, it includes so many things, starting from molecules, cells, tissues, organs, which provide both non-specific as well as specific protection against microbes. Not only microbes, even the poisons that are produced by the microbes, tumors, all these things. So that's why it's a system where molecules, cell, tissues, organs together provide both specific as well as non-specific protections against the microorganisms, even the toxins produced by those microorganisms and tumor cells. So that's why our immune system is very crucial for the very survival of our human race. Now, immune response and immunity. Immune response, as I have told you, it is nothing but the response against the antigens, and it can be both innate as well as adaptive. Innate, as I have told you, they are ready to fight at any given point of time. Adaptive is a specific which I have already discussed. In this adaptive, there are two types. One is primary um, adaptive immune responses, and the other one is secondary adaptive immune responses. I will come to that later. Then, what is immunity? Immunity is nothing but the state of both non-specific as well as specific protections against this infection. It's a state, it's a condition of the body against the both specific as well as non-specific pathogens. Ultimately, the body is protected. In immunity, again there are two: natural immunity and artificial immunity. Natural immunity and artificial immunity is the one by taking vaccination you protect. You take vaccination, you must have taken MMR or you must have taken polio vaccine. All these are conferring the artificial immunity. But natural one, we are by birth we are having some immunity naturally. Then in natural acquired immunity, we have both active as well as passive. So what is this active? Where the antigens enter the body naturally, and that triggers or orchestrate innate and adaptive immune system in our body. It uh, makes our immune system to function, and this provides a long-term protection usually because it keeps the memory. It keeps the memory. Whereas the passive, uh, for example, the protection passes from mother to the fetus when it is in the uterus. Fetus on its own, not having any. Even the newly born baby uh, may not be having any immunity of its own, but she is protected by the mother's protection. Antibodies pass from mother fe- fetus through the placenta, or when the uh, baby feed the breast milk of the mother, the this immunity or protection comes from mother to baby. So this is what we call passive immunity. This provides immediate short-term protection because ready-made antibodies are uh, supplied to the baby, and uh, till it attains his or her own immune system, this will last. It provides very short-term protection till that antibodies live in the body. Once the antibodies are also having the lifespan, once their lifespan is over, no, that immunity will not be there. So then active immunity, as I have told you, Antigen enters the body through vaccination with response to innate or adaptive immune system. As I have told you, even vaccinations and all those things. Whereas the passive immunity, uh, antibodies, there are two things. Artificially acquired immunity. First, we are talking about the natural acquired immunity. Now, it is the artificially acquired immunity. So, antigens enter our body through vaccination. So, all of you have taken the polio vaccination. Uh, what you have received is attenuated polio virus. The very weak polio virus has been injected in our body. That virus injected is attenuated and very weak, so it will not be able to produce any symptoms, but uh, that much is enough to orchestrate our immune or to uh, ignite the response, immunoresponse in our immune system. And once such things are there, then they will keep the memory cells, and the future infections are totally prevented. And active immunity through vaccination and other things, though it is artificial, but it provides long-term protection. Whereas the passive immunity, uh, here our body will not do anything. It will not produce the antibodies. Instead of that, and ready-made antibodies are injected into our body, either in the form of immune serum globulins, immune globulins, gamma globulins. They provide intermediate or short-term protection, not long-term. A good example for this is, suppose if a person, uh, or if in the case of snake bite, uh, what is this the antivenom? Once there's a snake, if the poisonous snake, cobra or crate or some viper bites, means what is done is immediately anti venom is given. What is this antivenom? Antivenom is the ready-made antibody that has been got from somewhere else, from the especially from horse blood and all those things. So now what is done is antibodies are directly injected. These antibodies will fight against the uh, antigen. The toxin is an antigen, because there is no time in our body to produce our own antibodies, because and by the time our body produce the antibodies, the person will die. So that's why for the quick and immediate action, what is done is ready-made antibodies are injected. That is giving you a passive immunity. Our body has not prepared that. It has been prepared somewhere. Some other organism or individual might have prepared, and it has been artificially given to us. Especially in the snake bite is a very good example for this. Now, ultimately, in the end, we can, before moving to the further discussion, let's try to summarize what we have discussed till now. So, our immune system is there to protect from pathogens and microorganisms, because the microorganisms or so-called pathogens are capable of causing the infection or the diseases. Then lastly, the infection. Infection is the ability of the pathogen to enter the host. What is infection? We say a person is infected means when the pathogen enters the host. And once infection is the ability of the pathogen to enter the host, not only enter the host, in the host body they should be able to multiply. They will multiply and they will stimulate an immune response. That is what we call infection. What is the disease? If there are clinical symptoms, manifestations associated with the infection, then we call it as infection or disease. Disease is the clinical manifestation of this infection. So you call fever a disease when you show the rise in temperature, body pain, headache. These are the clinical manifestations or symptoms, what we call. And then we say that, okay, I'm a patient, I'm having these symptoms. That is, so there are host of pathogens which can cause the infection. It can be a few, I have told you that the streptococcus, or it is pneumonia bacteria, mycobacterium, Ebola virus, HIV, aspergillosis, candida. These are all fungus. So plasmodium, ascaris, plasmodium is a protozoa, ascaris is a nematode. So there are so many hosts. They may be virus, bacteria, protozoa, or it can be fungus, or it can be nematodes. Even many of them can cause these diseases. So bacteria, virus, fungi, parasites, they are hosts. We cannot list them. How many pathogens are there or so on. So now again, what is pathogen? Pathogen is the one, it's a microbe that causes the disease. We call it as pathogen. What is antigen? Antigen is a material. It may be from the pathogen or entire pathogen that can induce immune response. It is known as antigen. Antigens are generally they are the proteins. Sometimes polysaccharides can also, but generally antigens are proteins. These are the materials that induce our immune response. Innate immunity, it is rapid and non-specific. Adaptive, slower and specific. Then we will use two more terms. One is leukocytes, which all of you know, it is the white blood cells. Then the next one is the lymphocytes. Lymphocytes are the specialized blood cells which mediate adaptive immunity. Lymphocytes are the specialized blood cells which are produced in our bone marrow and that mediate adaptive immunity, especially. So now we have to move on to after this brief introduction about this immunology and different kinds of immune system and their role and the total function of the immune system, let me move on to the most important one thing: antigen, immunoglobulins, structure and function. Antigen, I have already told you. Antigen is nothing but a material which can orchestrate immune response in our body. The name antigen has come from a Greek word. Anti means against, genos means genus, a kind, a material which works against. That is what is known as antigen. So, if you want to define an antigen, is a organic substance of a colloid structure, protein or different protein combinations, which may be in combination with lipids or monosaccharides. Monosaccharides. I have told you these are nothing but the organic substances, which are which can be proteins or different protein complexes, which can be proteins and different protein complexes, which function in combination with the lipids or polysaccharides. A only protein or a conjugated protein, I can say that. Either it may be having a combination with a lipid or a carbohydrate also. When it enters into the body, is capable of causing the production of antibodies. What is antibodies? Antibodies is the result of our immune responses. Antibodies are the result. What is the result is antibody, cause is the antigen for our immune response. Cause for an immune response is the antigen, and result of the immune response is the antibodies. So that's why these are uh, some organic substances of colloidal structure which on entering into the body is capable of causing the production of antibodies. And how? By initiating the immune response. And once these antibodies are produced, they These antibodies react specifically with the antigen from whom they have been produced. What does it mean? An antigen enters the body. Upon injection, it triggers the immune response. The result of the immune response is the antibody. And this antibody will react only with the specific antigen which is responsible for the production of this antibody only. It will not function against some other antigen. It will function only against that antigen. So they are highly specific and in the reaction, and that is the speciality of this uh, specificity of these antibodies as well as the antigens. So an antigenic substance, antigens need not be always the pathogens. Even some of the substances like the snake venom that I have told you. So they are the substances that have certain properties. One is they are colloidal structure and they are having the salt. They can be soluble in our body fluid. They dissolve in our body fluid and they are colloidal structure and mainly they are made up of what you call the proteins. An antigen has some antigenic properties. All antigens have antigenic properties. What are those antigenic properties that are pertinent to toxins of a plant origin? Toxins may be of the plant origin like resins, robins, abrins, cortin, etc. These are all toxins which have been produced by the plants, plant toxins. Or it can be toxins of animal origin like the toxins of snake, spider, scorpion, bees, different organs, different animals. Then, being a protein, the antigens are also enzymes. They can be native or foreign proteins. Native means that may be in our body, especially in the autoimmune system, you will see. Foreign proteins are generally these pathogens. Then various cellular elements or tissues and organs, they may function against them, autoimmune disorders. Or it can be bacteria and their toxins, viruses, anything can be the antigens. So the antigens are characterized by some of their properties. One is the antigenicity. What is antigenicity? Antigenicity is the ability of the antigen to cause the production of antibody. Suppose if an antigen fails to trigger the immune response and thus produce the antibody, we can say that that antigen has no antigenicity. So antigenicity is the ability. It should initiate the immune response and produce the antibodies, which is known as antigenicity. So that's why the main property of the antibody, the antigen is its ability to produce the antibodies. Its ability to produce the antibody. Then antigen specificity, what we call. It is the ability to enter into an interaction with the corresponding antibody. When the antigen enters the body, immune response is orchestrated and produces the antibody which is specific to this antigen. So antigen and antibody generally exhibit the antigen specificity. The ability to interact with only the corresponding antibodies. In our body, there may be thousand different kinds of antibodies, but a specific antigen will uh, try to interact with only that highly specific to the specific antigen. Then there are terms. you will come immunogen, antigen, epitope, haptons. These are certain terminologies which are being frequently used uh, along with this what you call the antigen. Many consider this as the same, but they are slightly different. First, what is immunogen? Immunogen is also a antigen which stimulates and produces a humoral or cell mediated immune response. The one, an immunogen is the one, a stimulus, it's a stimulus. Because of the stimulus, it produces a humoral or cell mediated immune response. What is humoral and cell mediated immune response? I will take it next. Now I am not going to. Just you remember, it's a humoral and cell mediated immune response. Then antigen, as I have told you, any substance that binds specifically to the antibody, that binds specifically to an antibody or a T cell receptor. Antibodies are also known as T cell receptors. Then remember, all immunogens are antigens, but not all antigens are immunogens. This is the very, very interesting thing. All immunogens are antigens, but all antigens need not be immunogen, because all antigens will not initiate this humoral and cell mediated immune response. So that's why all antigens are not immunogens, but all immunogens are undoubtedly their antigens. Even I have used one more term, the hapten. These are some very small molecules, very, very small fraction called as haptens that can bind to the AB or TCR, but they cannot initiate immune response. They can attack to our uh, cells, different cells, AB cells or TCR cells, but they cannot initiate immune response. They are called as haptens because they are very small molecules. They can bind with our AB cells or TCRs, but they cannot initiate any immune response. So, immunogen stimulates the produces a humoral or cell-mediated immune response, whereas antigen is the one which binds specifically to an antibody or a T cell receptor. Then one more, epitope we have used. Epitope is nothing but a small fraction of an antigen. It is a small fraction of an antigen that is recognized and bound by AB or TCR or MHC complex. This is a small portion of the antigen, and that has been recognized also by our immune system, and it is it binds with our ABR TCR or MHC complex. So that's why it is called as antigen determinant, and they cannot epitope on its own. They cannot produce immune response. Haptens, as I have told you, low molecular weight molecules that can be made immunogenic. This both epitope and haptens, they also can cause the disease, provided they have they can find association with to a suitable carrier. If they are able to associate themselves with a suitable carrier, then they can. Otherwise, not. A suitable carrier may be an another protein. Then one more terminology, that is paratopy. What is the site of variable domain? of an antibody or T cell receptor that binds to the an epitope on the antigen. An antibody on its surface has certain sites, certain locations, what we call V domain or variable domain, where the epitope of an antigen can bind. That is known as paratope. Paratope refers, epitope is a part of the antigen. Paratope is the site on the surface of the antibody on which this epitope can bind. That is known as paratope. So here, uh, for the timing, I will stop because I'm running out of time. And in the next class, I will.